Hello and welcome back to the Waban podcast. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here by Sparky Boom Man. How's it going?
Yeah,
I get it.
I don't know how to make like the that noise.
Boom. I love how he every time he does it, you can see him doing that deep breath, and he does a very specific deep breath kind of thing. Because they talk about throughout the show how firebending comes from the breath.
Yeah. So that is a form of firebending then.
Yes, it is. It's just a separate thing. I don't know exactly. They don't really explain it a lot, but there's other people like that who have the same the eye tattoo. So I guess it's some sort of because in Legend of Korra there's a character like that.
Oh.
And it's a woman who has an eye tattoo thing.
And does blow things up
and
with
does
her
the
mind.
same thing. Yeah. It's and does the same thing. So I think maybe there's I don't really know. There's not a lot of information on the lore or the history of it, so it's more mysterious. At least as far as I know.
I've never seen anything explaining him.
Yeah, I've researched things into the world and the lore, so maybe some of the things in Avatar Studios will explain it more. Maybe some of the stuff they do. It's interesting. But anyways, moving away from that, because we're not there yet. We're going to talk about the first 11 episodes of Avatar Season 3. First 11 because episode 10 and 11 are both two-parters, so are a two-part episode, so it wouldn't make sense. We don't want to get to the first half of a two-part episode and stop there. That would be annoying.
Unfortunately, that means this podcast will now be 3 hours long, so...
Right, yeah, exactly. Some of these episodes you don't have a lot to say about them, so we'll get through. The longest podcast is still the season 2 second half that we did 2 weeks ago. That's still the longest one, but we'll see how it goes. So to start off, the first episode is titled "The Awakening."
Mm-hmm.
And
Aang has hair.
Yeah. That's it makes sense. He was out for how long did they say he was out?
Weeks.
A few weeks.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. But yeah, basically Aang, last time we saw Aang, he basically died, right? In the Avatar state.
Yeah.
But
Katara
good thing
healed him with the special water.
You going back to I'm currently rewatching Avatar now because my brother,
15th time.
Right, 5th, but but my brother has never seen it, so I'm rewatching it with him now. Mm-hmm. And rewatching, we just recently started season 2. We're not watching it as fast as I've watched it before, but that's fine. So the first episode, rewatching the first episode of season 2, I you see where Paku gives her the spirit water,
right.
And it's the first time you watch that, you're just kind of oh, I don't know what that. Okay, it seems it might be important later, but you don't realize just how important it becomes at the end of the season
for something so much later that's so important.
Yeah, actually, the first time I watched the season, the first time I ever watched the show, I actually, by the time I got to the end of the season, I completely forgot about the spirit water that he gave her, and then she brought it, and I was wait. I was oh, wait, where did she get that again? And then, when I rewatched it, I was oh, okay.
There's a lot of things in the show that does that. The balloons or the blimps, the spirit water.
Yeah. Most, things have some sort of, set up, something leading towards it.
And they wait so long to finally pull that thread, and it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, they do it really well. Because, at the end of the balloon episode... Mm-hmm. Episode with the war balloons, it's they're oh, this defeat will be the pathway to many future victories for the Fire Nation, as they're stealing the technology, and it's a big cliffhanger moment, and then it's never brought up again until
the end of this set of episodes.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
the awakening. Aang died. Katara saved him, but he's been unconscious for like a few weeks or
And the
whatever.
world thinks he's dead again.
Um, yeah, I like the setup of how like he wakes up and they're like on the Fire Nation ship, and he's like he thinks he's like kidnapped or something, but it turns
Mm-hmm.
out they just stole a Fire Nation ship and are pretending to be Fire Nation.
And then he's running away from
Yeah.
Pipsqueak and the Duke,
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't recognize them.
I don't know why he wouldn't though.
Well, because they were in like Fire Nation armor, and
I mean,
it was,
yeah, but
Pipsqueak was the one who's talking, so he's always like, "Hey, wait, stop! He's awake!" Blah blah blah. Deep as
I don't know.
hell.
Still feel like he would have recognized him. I don't know. That's fine. I mean, that was in season 1, so I guess that was like long enough ago that it was like, it was like probably at least half a year or more ago. Because
And
like,
understandably, he
yeah,
was pretty panicked when he was going through that.
I mean, yeah, obviously. But yeah, so Aang, the whole world thinks he's dead. Because he basically was, because
Yeah,
Azula essentially killed him right there, then and there. And as far as they knew, he was dead. Because if you remember in season 2, at the end, they left on Appa, and he was still like dead.
mm-hmm.
And then it was while they were flying away that Katara saved him. So yeah, it makes sense that they would have.
Yeah, he was dead for like a minute or two.
Right. Yeah. So it makes sense that like Azula would have reported that the Avatar was killed, and therefore the whole world would have, it would have eventually spread to the whole world. Oh, the Avatar died. So,
and I guess this is the first time where they actually start setting up what the proper invasion of the Day of Black Sun is going to be.
yeah. So you kind of get the setup for the fact the whole the eclipse in the library, which is literally like halfway through season 2. That's when you first learn about it, and then now you see they're actually kind of setting up their plan. So Aang is very like, in this episode, it's interesting to see his sort of reaction to it. He's very like, he wants to go fight the Fire Lord now. He's like, this has gone on too long. I need to do it now, and I don't want anyone to come with me. Like, I don't want to put anybody else in danger again. And like,
I failed once, I can't do it again.
Yeah. And there's like that scene, like this is a pretty intense episode, like first beginning episode. Like, it's pretty interesting. Like, it's actually really, it's a really good opening episode for sure.
Yeah, it really, because they're on the Fire Nation ship, and then they explain, oh no, whole water tribe like forces here, so we're fine. We captured this ship, and they get into a fight, which, as a side note, Toph already being like having advanced metal bending to be able to do what she did in that fight is awesome.
Yeah. Like, you can tell her metal bending has improved since before. Like, it's still not completely refined, but it's like, you can see the improvement a little bit.
The way she like jams her hands into the deck of the ship, and then it crumples in a line.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I like it a lot.
As they're fighting that enemy ship that figures out their ploy, Aang has to just stay and watch because they can't know that he's
but it's
alive.
Like, it's hard for him to do that, yeah. Which is, really interesting. Because, like, so far throughout the show, if that, anytime a situation like that was happening, he would be right out there,
Right.
Especially after all of the character growth he went through up to this point. Because at the beginning of the show, his main sort of character arc was kind of, at the beginning, he was very much avoidant. He had this avoidance kind of thing where he wanted to like avoid being the Avatar. Like, he never wanted to be. And then it was sort of him growing and sort of taking on that responsibility. Yeah. And now he's like fully like, I'm ready to take on the responsibility of being the Avatar. He's like full on like that. First kind of character arc kind of has already in a way completed for the most part, but now it's like
he can't do it
now.
Anymore.
It's like, he's finally ready to just go out there and take on his responsibility and fully, fight. but he can't. Yeah, so it's kind of it adds sort of an interesting new little conflict.
And there's the whole other aspect of that, which is everyone thinks he's dead, and he doesn't want people to think he's dead. He wants to give hope to the people.
Right.
But
right.
on the counterpart, everyone's saying, no, we need you being alive to stay a secret.
Right,
so
because that way,
surprise.
Yeah, because that way, if everybody knows he's alive, then it's, they can prepare for it. They can be ready, whatever. They'll still be hunting him down and stuff. They want him to be able to sneak by unnoticed. Yeah. So yeah, then Aang just straight up leaves too. Yeah. Like he leaves.
Aang dips.
There's a storm. That scene is pretty intense too, when there's like the storm and then he's like, he kind of uses his glider as like a parasail kind of thing. Like he's just, he has this, you can like feel the determination in him where he's just like, I have to end this now. Even though it's like pretty clear that he's not ready to do it now. Like he's still a little weak from his injury. He's still not,
And there was even a moment where there was like, before all of this, there was like 2 or 3 moments where he like fell underwater, and he did like immediately went into the avatar state to pull himself out, like how he did when that got into the iceberg, and there was other times where he used it to save him and his friends from drowning.
Right.
But when he did that this time, that didn't happen, and it was eerily similar, but then that stark contrast.
He can't, like he got to a point where, throughout this entire season until like throughout this, like almost the entire season, I think, he never goes into the avatar state because he actually can't anymore. Because if you remember from the Guru episode, he was like, if you leave now, and if he unlocked, because he said like, oh, once you start unlocking the chakras, you can't stop until you unlock all of them. He never unlocked the final one, so it locked it, so he can't go into the, he was leaving, the Guru told him, he's like, if you stop now, you won't be able to go into the avatar state at all.
And there was even a later explanation after this where he said,
yes,
when I went in the avatar state and died in it, that locked my final chakra.
Well, right. They use that. Yeah. There's like in one of the later episodes that we will talk about today. Yeah. Because it was, which was a nice little way of like reestablishing it to people who might have, if you had forgotten.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cause like at the end of, season 2, the only reason he started to go into the avatar state, when Azula shot him, was because he was finally trying to unlock that chakra. But now I guess there's a setup where it's blocked completely, and I don't even know if I guess his final chakra is blocked as well, to where he can't even unlock it. I don't know exactly how that works, but
it was somewhat vague, because the Guru said that if he left now, he would never be able to unlock it, and he tried to unlock it again, and it worked, and he went into the avatar state, but then he died. And then now it's locked for real this time, apparently.
Right. To where, which I it's fine that it's a little vague, because, I mean, personally, I like the fact that it's like he just can't go into the avatar state anymore.
He doesn't have that trump card anymore.
Right. Which before, and the thing is, before, it never really was a full trump card because it was uncontrollable, right? We saw like the first episode of season 2 was all about how he couldn't control it, and this guy was trying to force him into the avatar state, and then but he still couldn't control it.
Right.
It was all about him letting, it was like when he was extremely emotional, he would go into it and as a defense mechanism. But the thing is, if he was able to now, because of what he learned from the Guru, he would be able to control it, and then it would kind of become like oh yeah, he can control it. It's easy for him to defeat the Fire Lord. It's boring now, So I like the fact that they sort of set it up to where it's like locked for this season.
They disabled the MacGuffin.
Yes, exactly.
But during this whole storm, he finally wipes out, and he's giving up, and then Grogu comes down, and then
Yue comes down.
Yue. I always forget her name. And, when they convince him to get back up, and he finally washes up on shore.
Yeah. 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 And then, so he washes up on shore, and then his friends come by on Appa. They find him. So it's, the rest of the gang. So Katara,
Mhm.
Sokka, Toph, Appa, Momo.
Their
Um,
dad.
did he wasn't with them then,
Yeah,
was
they
he?
were. Yeah, it was. There was an entire little subplot where Katara was like
Yeah, but that was
angry at her dad
that
because
was
he
earlier
left.
in the episode, though. I'm talking about the very end of the episode.
Didn't he come with?
No, because he didn't end up traveling with them throughout the because you know how like they're traveling to the rest of the first half of the season is them traveling to the rendezvous point, and he
Right.
wasn't with them, so I don't think he was there at the end of the episode. Like, yeah, he was
Right,
there throughout
right.
the rest of it. Yeah, yeah, because it was that whole subplot about Katara kind of being mad at her dad,
Mm-hmm.
like because he left, even though like she understands, but she was still mad.
Right.
Um, and then so yeah, and then I love the ending of the episode, the ending shot. So like, Aang kind of, this is when Aang fully accepts the fact. He's like, you know what, you guys are right. It's better if the world thinks I'm dead right now. And like
Mm-hmm.
his glider washes up and it's like completely like broken. And like, I think like Toph is like, oh, I think that's your glider. Yeah, it's broken, and he's like, it's okay. It's better that the world thinks I'm dead now. And then that final shot where he like
Stabs it into the
stabs it
molten rock.
into the lava, yeah, and then it
Mm-hmm.
catches on fire. Like I think that was probably the final shot of the episode.
It was
I
somewhere close to
I
that, yeah.
think, yeah, that's like a really good like final moment. I think for the beginning of the season, because like that staff has always been like a huge part of him,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's interesting to see like he's like completely like ready to move on from it and like give it up almost. It's really interesting.
Right.
I don't know. I just think
Was
that's
there,
visually was an effective shot.
now remind me, was there a subplot with Zuko in this episode?
Yes.
It was him starting to
Yes.
go home, right?
Yes. So in this episode, he goes home. You see that he started dating May.
Yeah, which was rather
Um,
abrupt, but also kind of hinted at. So,
well, it was hinted at a little bit in the last season, and
yeah,
I guess they seem to make a good couple.
they're equally edgy.
Yeah, yeah. There's, yeah, yeah.
I had a very
They're
hard time
both
just
they're both
considering
they're
if,
both still going through their goth phase. Like
yeah, I had a very hard time with that because I was like, are these, some of this stuff seems like fun and like whatever, but also some of it seems like, oh God, this is not working out. What is going on here?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, so yeah, basically what happened, the main sort of thing that happens is it's him going home, and then when he's home, he has this like really like strong like he's really nervous about seeing his dad again for the first time in 3 years. After last time he saw him was the when he burned him and banished him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, and he's like what's he gonna think of me? And
Yeah,
he goes in,
he's finally reached his goal that he's been
right,
aiming for all this
and he
time.
goes in, and this is a really interesting way to set up the season as well. He
Mm-hmm.
goes in, and his father accepts him, and he's all happy about it, and he's like, I'm proud of what you did. And he's like confused, right? And he goes,
Mm-hmm.
what did Azula tell you? And she's like, she told me that you killed the Avatar. And
Yeah.
that kind of is like, wait, so I mean, and we all know Azula's a liar, like, obviously, remember, Azula always lies,
Yeah.
but like,
What did she have to gain from that lie?
right. And then throughout the episode, he's confused about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the end, there's that like moment where he goes to ask her, and he's like, why did you tell him that? And she starts off being like, oh, I just did it because I did it as a favor because otherwise he wouldn't have accepted you back. I did it so that he would accept you back, blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
And
okay,
then
but
she
then she goes,
says,
so, unless there's a chance that the Avatar could have survived,
yup.
then he would be mad. And that's when Zuko remembers when Katara offered the spirit water to
For a
him.
scar, yeah.
And he's like, wait, he's like, there is a way he could have survived because she had that spirit water. which makes that whole scene even more important because now that's how Zuko knows that Aang is still alive. Like he at least knows there's a decent chance that he's still alive.
Yeah.
Which kind of continues throughout this first half of the season. So that's really interesting. But I just realized we're at like 20 minutes. So that first episode is just really a really good setup for the season, I think.
Yeah, it's an excellent setup.
It's definitely like, especially, it's just really good. So anyways, we'll move on to the next one. Next is the headband.
All right, Aang goes to school.
Aang goes to school, yeah. I don't have a lot to say about this episode. Like, it's fun. There's definitely some funny moments, like Flameo Hotman. Flameo? It's funny because like it's like Aang knows more about Fire Nation culture than they do, so it's like confusing. Although, except Aang's knowledge of Fire Nation culture is based on like 100 years ago.
Yeah, so everything's changed.
Do people still do people even still say Flameo? I don't know.
Not by their reactions, no.
Yeah, he walks by. He's like Hotman. The guy's just like, oh, hi, I guess. Because obviously cultures change a lot in 100 years. So
yeah.
But I love how confident Aang is in that. He's like, I know. I used to visit my friend Kuzan here all the time. I know what they're like. Just follow my lead. He's like, hey, Hotman. I love that.
And then when the teacher said like about the Fire Nation like winning a battle against the air nomads, he's like, the air nomads didn't have a formal army. He defeated them by ambush. And I'm like, well, how would you know that unless you were here 100 years ago? It's like, okay, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, well, and that's actually interesting. So like a lot of this episode is definitely played more for like the comedy side, but there are little things like that where it's actually interesting because you get to see sort of the Fire Nation propaganda that happens, where it's like
interesting insight into
right. They make the air nomad genocide seem more like it was a battle. Like, oh, the air nomads were in war with us, and we just happened to win the war. We had like as if it was a good thing, like we had to fight back, or like they kind of frame it not as. Whereas in reality, the air nomads were perfectly peaceful, and then were attacked by the Fire Nation. And so it's interesting to see like the propaganda.
There was also the bit at the end after the dance party, which, by the way, the whole scene with Katara, that dance was awesome.
Yeah.
But all the kids putting on headbands and confusing all the guards. Like, hey, how you doing? You looking for someone?
Yeah, I like that. I think one of the funniest parts, though, in this episode is definitely when Saka and Katara had to pretend to be Aang's parents. The name's Fire, Wang Fire, and this is my wife, Sapphire Fire. But like, it's funny because like, I always find that really funny that like the last name he went with is Fire. Like, we're in the Fire Nation. What's my last name? Fire. Like he could have got like real subtle, like,
and then Saka keeps that like personality for later as well.
Yeah, that's funny because Saka throughout it he wears that like beard and mustache, fake beard and mustache throughout like a few other times in the season, especially he wears it throughout the rest of the episode too. They're there and he's just like, why are you still wearing that? He's like,
it is permanently glued to my face as he strokes his beard.
But I also love like he continues to play the whole father thing. Like he's talking about it. He's like, Aang's like, I need to like go back to school. I need to do that. Like, I'm gonna do this and whatever. And he's like,
no more school for you.
And he just goes, go to your room. He's still acting like his father. I don't know how, it's weird how like they were able to how convincing that was though, because like you think about it, like for instance, like especially with Qatar, because like Qatar is literally 2 years older than Aang.
Yeah.
Like at least with Sokka, they were able to put a fake beard on, which might have made him look older. But like I don't know, with Qatar, they were probably like, she looks pretty young to have a 12-year-old son.
Like the only thing they did to disguise her was make a fake pregnant belly, and that was it.
Yeah, but it worked, I guess. No, it is a funny episode.
Zuko? Question mark?
Yeah. So in this episode, I think, trying to remember exactly. I think this was so at the beginning. I think this is the episode where Zuko is like going to the prison to visit Iroh.
Right.
And like Iroh isn't talking back to him. Like Iroh's just kind of sitting there facing away from him, and Zuko's like trying to like, so you can see sort of the back and forth in Zuko's head, right? Where he's like, he's confused. He's like, I'm confused, Uncle. He's like, hey, like it's fine. Like I captured, like, like I was just killing the Avatar. I was doing it like I'm back home now. We're back. He's like, but at the same time,
everything that I've ever wanted, but I'm still so confused.
Yeah, exactly. So you sort of see that, which kind of, I really like that they kind of do that, because it kind of sets up this. So like at the end of the last season, he has that moment of like decision, right? The last episode of season 2 was called Crossroads of Destiny, which like, it was the crossroads of Zuko's destiny, right? Like where he has a crossroad, has to make a decision.
You made this point before.
Right. And I always thought like when I first watched it, I was like hoping he would make like, try to, side with Aang and try to like, finally, become, finish his character arc. And then he didn't. And I was like, no, but like realistically, I think because he didn't, it makes his eventual character arc more effective, because I think for him to fully go against everything, he needs to sort of regain what he's lost, like get what he's wanted the whole time. It's like he needs to restore what he's lost this whole time, get what he's wanted the whole time, for him to fully realize that it's not what he really wants.
Yeah.
So like, I definitely think that was the right move for them to take with it. So, but yeah, so throughout it, and then at the end of the episode, I'm pretty sure is when he hires.
Oh yeah, Sparky Boom Man.
Yes, or Combustion Man, whichever one you want to use.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's like an intense moment, because I mean, and again, it's kind of playing off of what happened in the last episode, where he kind of has this subtle thing where he thinks Aang is still alive, and he's like, nobody can find out about this. If he doesn't want Aang to be killed because he wants Aang to die necessarily. It's more or less because he doesn't want anyone to find out, because he, the only reason he's accepted by his father now is because he supposedly killed Aang. Right. So if Aang's still alive, then his father would be mad, which, really shows just how terrible his father is, that like his father is only accepting him because he killed the Avatar, like it's really messed up. Which, I mean, yeah, Ozai's a terrible, abusive father. We already know this. This is obvious.
And oddly enough, Zuko's hiring of Sparky Boom Man saved Aang later on. I don't know if you noticed that, because it was kind of vague. I will mention it later when we get to that episode.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we'll have to get to that. But yeah, one interesting thing that a lot of people point out about this episode, though, with the Aang storyline, the Aang and the gang storyline, the whole dance party thing, like we don't dance around here. We got to show them the power of dancing. It's very much taken from like Footloose.
That is the entire premise of Footloose, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like there's like a town where they aren't allowed to dance. I think it's in Footloose. It might be because of like religious reasons or something. I don't know. It's all about. I don't know exactly. I've never actually watched Footloose. I could be wrong. But yeah, so this is. I always refer to this as the Footloose episode. So I mean, it is. But
I don't know if you can hear my dog going nuts downstairs, but
yeah, I heard it.
yeah, there she is.
I mean, last week you heard my dog. This week I hear yours.
Yeah.
Nice trade-off.
I don't think you've heard Izzy yet, though. She is pretty much quiet, at least for now.
Yeah, for
but
now.
Margot's going nuts.
Oh, jeez. All right. We can move on to episode 3,
Awesome.
which is The Painted Lady.
All right. They meet Sludge Village.
Yeah.
And Doc/Shoe/
I forget
what was
the
third
name.
one?
I don't remember. The third one didn't come in until like the end of the episode.
What was his name? It started with a B.
So
Whatever.
This is... I don't mind it. Like, I like this episode, but it's probably my least favorite of the third season. Like, I don't know. It's like...
I think I like this one better than the last one.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess. It's not as important, though, because the last one had Zuko stuff going on that was important. This one literally doesn't feature Zuko or anything. It's just the Aang gang.
Aang gang.
So, like, there's actually something interesting, though. This episode, I always thought of it like this episode actually kind of creates a somewhat of a minor plot hole.
It does?
In a way, kind of. So, okay, so like...
Please explain.
One of the big things in this episode is Saka is obsessed with his, like, schedule.
Yes.
Keep to the schedule. He's very adamant that if we don't keep to the schedule, they're not going to make it to the invasion on time.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing is just completely dropped after this episode. Literally, the next episode, they spend a couple days in one place so Saka can learn how to fight with the sword. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm pretty sure Sokka's whole calculations were wrong or something, because they literally arrive at the rendezvous point like 4 days early once you get to that point too. And then every episode they spend like a couple days in one location too. Like, so it's kind of weird when you look back at this. It's never mentioned again. You're just kind of like, so that his whole schedule was pointless. Like,
yeah, I think he was just being like overly zealous with that whole thing.
Oh yeah, he was probably like overestimating how much time it would take, I guess.
Yeah.
But still, it's like a little weird when it's like he's so obsessed with it. Then after this, like literally the next episode is about him taking 2 days to be in one place so he can learn swords, learn to fight with a sword, It's just a little weird. But anyways, beyond that, the episode's all right. It is kind of cool to see. It is a good episode to kind of see some of the like negative sides of like the Fire Nation and how the Fire Nation's war like is affecting
besides
people.
Just straight warmongering,
right? Is seeing how them fighting the war is negatively affecting the citizens of their nation, because these people are like sick and dying and don't have any good food because their water is
sludge.
It's gross. It's disgusting because of the factory which is used to build like weapons and stuff.
Did they ever go into detail of if that village was actually Fire Nation or?
Yeah, I mean it's within the Fire Nation. Yes.
Okay.
It's like, I think so. If you look at like a map, there's like a series of like islands next to the Fire Nation. So it might be like in that kind of area. Cause like, I mean, throughout this season, they're traveling through the Fire Nation throughout this first half, at least. I don't really have a lot to say about the episode beyond that though. Like, I feel like, I don't know if you do, if there's anything.
Well, I guess kind of, cause I do really like the whole, it strengthens a part of Katara's character, being like her like coming straight out and saying, if I see someone in help that I can help, I will help them.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just kind of ended up taking the place of the Painted Lady.
Yeah.
Because of that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is kind of cool at the end, I think, when you see like how they sort of fake the magic of the Painted Lady by using like their bending and using like you know, Appa's making noises in the distance. Like, it was really cool.
And Toph just slamming a rock down on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then at the end, they clean the river out. So that's cool. Like, at the end, it kind of seemed like, oh, they cleaned the river out really quickly. But then you kind of think about it, and you're like, oh, they probably used some bending to help them do it.
Bending would help a lot.
Like, I'm sure, whatever pieces of like mud and stuff were in there, Toph probably pulled out, whatever.
But yeah, I guess that's all to mention about that episode.
Yeah. Which is probably good, because it's good to have a few episodes where we don't have a lot to say about, because then the episode's not as super long. Mm-hmm. So next, which I briefly mentioned there, is Sokka's master.
Oh, hell yeah.
Saka learns some swords.
Yeah, this is the first time where they actually lean into Sokka, thinking that he's useless with the benders.
Yeah. Also, I'm not sure, but I think this is the episode where you see Iroh training in the prison. I don't know if it was this one or a different one.
Right.
I don't know. It's somewhere in these episodes.
Yeah, basically, at some point he stops pretending. He stops pretending on camera to be senile old man in a jail cell and starts like working out full on hardcore. Right,
but he's like hardcore working out, and then every time the guard comes in, he like just does something to look like he's just an insane old man.
Yeah, basically. Here's the clapping of him doing clap push-ups, and then when he
comes in and he's just randomly clapping in the air. Yeah. Or like there's like the moment he like throws the food in there, and he like starts eating it like a pig off the floor, and then as soon as the guard leaves, he picks it up, starts eating it like a normal person.
Yeah, very civilized.
Like he's purposely trying to convince them that he's like an insane old man who doesn't know what's going on, so they think he's not a threat at all, basically.
Yeah,
which is really smart. And then at the end, when he like takes his shirt off and he's freaking ripped, like, which is so hilarious compared to like Iroh, because Iroh's always been known for like, oh, he's got a big belly, he's he's fat, he makes fat jokes about himself,
that even was like I can't think of the word, but before that, the line that the guard said was, look at what you've become. And then he reveals that after he leaves. It's like,
this is what I've become. I mean, it's like, he's got all this time to sit in prison. Might as well use it to work out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that whole thing kind of makes you excited for future episodes, because you're like, ooh, what's he gonna do with all this this new strength? Like, so that's interesting.
And then
but yeah, anyways, the main plot of the episode, I don't know if that was in this episode or not. I think it was, but I could be wrong.
It was spread out over a few of them, I think.
It might have been, yeah. I think the working out thing was only in one, but maybe not. I don't know. It was.
So, you good?
Yeah. I just dropped something and then picked it up. Okay, so next, so it's Sokka's master. So the Sokka's sort of feeling down because, oh, you guys all have your bending and I am just a regular guy, which, like, come on, Sokka, you're important. You're the idea guy. Come on.
And then
the complaining guy
find a sword in the shop, and he's like, oh. And someone suggests, like, yeah, what if you got a swords master? And like, that would be cool. And they find one for him.
Yeah. I do have to say, though, I love seeing Sokka playing around with random weapons in the shop. Like, that's just hilarious. Like, half of them he probably doesn't even know how to use properly, and he's just like
giant club that he like can't
even pick up. And then Aang tries on a whole uniform of like
that looks like final boss armor from like Dark Souls or something.
And then I can do this. I can make a wind sword. What's a wind sword? And then he falls over. I think I'll stick with what I got. And then the beginning of the episode when they're watching like a meteor shower, and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful. And Toph's just like, see nothing once. You've seen nothing once. You've seen it a million times.
Or you've never seen
or
nothing
you've never
like
seen nothing.
this.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know
That's
what it
what
is.
Saka said afterwards when the meteor was like flying over them.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, because that's what started the whole thing. Because they were using their bending to like save everybody and save the place, and just like, what do I do? Keep an eye on Momo. So I'm just a lemur sitter. But yeah. Anyways, into the training thing. So he meets Master Pian Dao, who's an expert swords master.
And he's supposed to convince him that he's worthy, and he just says, "I'm probably not worthy."
Yeah, and I love that. That's what causes him to decide to train him, because he's like, like it intrigues him.
Yeah,
because most people come in and they're like, oh well, I'm worthy because of this. They're trying to like, but then he just kind of is very humble, and he's just like, yeah, I don't think I am worthy. And then he's like, that'll makes it more interesting to him, and that, that's more unique. And he's like, yeah, I can do something with this. And I love throughout all the training, you see it's like, it's very he does the training in a very unique way.
Yes, that was what I was going to say.
Yeah, and that's sort of the key to like, and like when they're fighting and when they have that sword fight at the end, he's sort of smart about it. He's really strategic and smart about it. Even if his like actual sword skills aren't like the best, he's still like able to be a good fighter because he uses his brains, and he's very resourceful and stuff. And you kind of see that. I really enjoyed seeing that.
And even while his master is like supposedly angry at him for lying about being Fire Nation, he's even like giving pointers like, excellent, using your superior agility against an older opponent. Or, that's it, make your environment fight for you.
Yeah.
Or then he slashes at the ground and gets dust in his eyes and is like, very resourceful.
Yeah.
He's like constantly like giving him pointers and like, I can't think of the word, complimenting him on his abilities.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting because like throughout the episode when he's doing the different training things, they even have nothing to do with swords. It's very like, you see like the very uniqueness, like, oh, so you can't take back a stroke of the brush. And
just
he's like you're getting ink on your face.
Blade.
You're getting ink on your face. He's like, wait, this is about me putting my identity on the page, right? Puts a bunch of ink on his face, splashes a print of his face on the page. Or like when he's oh my gosh, I love this. When he's painting, he has to paint the landscape. And it's like it looks like a child painted it. And he's like, I added a rainbow. Is that okay? I wouldn't have it any other way. So this is actually a fun little thing that we've like, when we watch it, we've noticed a lot throughout the show is there's always this constant theme throughout the show that Saka is bad at art. So if you notice, there's this. Yeah. This is one of the moments that shows it. There's like, I think season 1, there's a moment where he like gives Yue like its carving of that's supposed to look like a fish, but she couldn't tell what it was. It like looks really weird. Or he tried
to make a like lost pet poster for
Appa, and they looked really bad. And there's a few other moments throughout the show. I think there's more in season 3.
It's a nice running joke. Yeah,
I like that little running joke. We could talk about it more as we move on, but yeah, this is another one of those instances of it. But yeah, I do really like that. But yeah, and then like, he does like
he gives him the White Lotus chip.
Oh,
tying it into Iroh's connections, and like, oh, what is this? What is this gonna do later on?
Yeah, and because what we know about the White Lotus up to this point is that it's some sort of secret society that Iroh is part of. We don't really know much more about it other than that. And then you see this and you're like, wait a minute, this guy is, part of the White Lotus. And it's kind of like, interesting little thing. So yeah.
Oh, and we forgot to mention the sword.
Oh,
the
yeah,
meteor sword.
The space sword.
Yeah, it's cool as hell.
I love at the end, just like, I got some Earth from space, and then Katara's like, if it comes from space, it's not technically Earth, is it? I mean, I guess it counts because you can bend it. An Earthbender can bend it, so it counts.
I mean, yeah. Does that mean that Earthbending is misnamed then? Question mark.
It should be called what should be called solid substance bending,
dirt bending, rock
bending. But it's not just rock though. It's like rock
bending.
Geobend.
Depends. What is the actual definition?
You could go with
geo?
that. I mean, I guess technically most of the things they bend are some form of like rock, like because I guess no, dirt really isn't. I mean, like, because sand is kind of like tiny rocks almost.
Yeah, it's odd. But
I don't know. Whatever.
That's fine. Neither here nor there. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, no, he gets the space sword.
Space sword.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a good episode. I like that there's a few episodes throughout the show that sort of show Saka sort of building his fighting skills. Right. For instance, season 1, there was the Kyoshi Warriors episode. He's learning from Suki. There's this episode where he's learning about sword fighting. I don't think there's really any more, but like those are the main two. But like I like that they kind of show that, so you can kind of see that there's like a progression of him becoming a better fighter, a better warrior. Because like at the beginning of the show, he has a very much a warrior's mindset. He's like the warrior protecting the village. And like the very first episode of the show, or second episode, I think it is, the Zuko ship is riding towards him. He's standing like right in front of it, like ready to fight. He has this warrior's mindset, but he's not good at fighting.
Yeah, he's a child. He can't fight all that well.
Well, right. He probably never had proper training because his all of the older men in their village left when he was, I think like, I don't know, 12, 13, something like that.
Yeah.
So he probably never
gradually grows over the course of the seasons.
Right. And
he even just like sort of naturally gets better with his like own weapons from home, like the boomerang.
Yeah. Well, I feel like he was always good with that though, because if you know, like the first episode, he threw it and then it actually came back and hit Zuko. Like he had a helmet on, so it just kind of like knocked him over. But like, so I think he was always good with the boomerang. But like, yeah.
I don't know. I guess that always seemed like kind of like a luck throw to me. While like last season, you mentioned before that Sokka's story in that one episode with the small stories of everyone, he was just casually throwing it and like knew exactly where it was to catch it, just casually.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it wasn't a luck throw in the first episode though, because I feel like he probably practiced with it a lot at home. Like he probably like, ever since his dad left, he probably like was like trying to train with what he had. Even though nobody was there to like teach him, he was there. He was like probably training ready to fight. Because you get the sense that he's like ever since then he's like been like, I'm the man of the village. I need to like be ready to fight. So he's probably trained a lot with the boomerang at least. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's a good episode. Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot more to say about it.
There wasn't anything with Zuko?
No, I don't think so, because there was the Iroh thing. I think that was in this episode. Again, I'm not 100% on that.
Partially, I think.
But yeah. Next, we're at 50 minutes, so we might as well move on to the next episode. Let's just,
like I said, 3 hours.
Keep moving forward. Yeah, it's not going to be 3. That's a lot.
Bet.
All right, episode 5, The Beach.
This is like full, or well, just about full Zuko and everyone, right?
Right. Well, there is the side plot of the gang getting attacked by Combustion Man, but like
this is what I was talking about before.
It's fully focused on.
that Combustion Man saved them. Because at the beginning, they were...
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Okay, now I do remember this. Yeah, because the people saw Aang, and they were like, the Avatar is alive, and they were sending a messenger hawk, and then...
But Combustion Man was hired not only to kill Aang, but to keep
make
him a
sure
secret.
Nobody knew that he was still alive.
Yep,
yeah.
So his own vulture thing
got that's right.
messenger hawk.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so that... I will say the action of, like, the whole them being attacked, there's some really good action moments in there. Especially the moment like he like shoots, there's an explosion starting to happen, and then Aang like is like jumps in midair, he's like blowing some air, and it like pushes him back. There's like that slow motion shot is really cool. But yeah, I mean, there's not much more with those characters in this episode. It's just they get attacked, they escape, and they're like, who's that? It kind of creates this new mystery for them, at least. I mean, we know who he is. We know he was, why he's attacking them. But
the whole entire Fire Nation gang, Azula, Ty Lee, and May and Zuko,
they go on a beach vacation.
Yeah, and they grow a little. Besides Azula,
so this is like one of those episodes where like. It's weird. It's like, it's the episode you never knew you wanted, but you're so happy that it exists. Like, when I first was watching it, I was like, what? They're having like the Fire Nation kid villain characters go on like a beach vacation together. That's the episode.
It's like the weirdest version of like the beach episode in like animes, like where it's just like unnecessary fan service, but this is just like unnecessary like how they interact with actual people instead of like armies and such.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting part, because you see that. Well, you also see like a little bit of like Zuko and May's relationship, and kind of how they're like Zuko grabs the shell, and he's like, here. She's just like, why are you giving me this? And he's like, I saw it. I thought it looked pretty. Don't girls like stuff like that? Maybe stupid girls. Like, I just think their relationship is hilarious. And then like how like literally all of the guys on the beach are in love with Ty Lee, and like,
and Azula like this setup. Yeah, Azula
is like confused why guys don't like her. Azula's like, and then she goes, we will become the most powerful couple of all time.
And he's just
I gotta go, because before he's like really into her. He's like, yeah, you're pretty, yeah.
And then she gets,
and then just as soon as she says that, he's just like, I gotta go.
This entire episode just sets up like how they are as people, and it's such a unique view, because before it was just like, this is how they fight. This is, I
mean, yeah.
They're dynamic with each other because they're following Azula's orders and such.
But it's like, it's nice. It's like seeing them in like a normal life environment, like, oh, a beach vacation. You kind of see the personalities in that, instead of just, I mean, because like Zuko, we got to know really, really well as a character at this point, but like the others, especially May and Ty Lee, you kind of just up to this point kind of saw them as like you got to know their personalities, but you didn't get to really know the characters, because they were just kind of like, they were Azula's posse, and beyond that,
this is like the first like severely in-depth look at what is going on in Zuko's mind during this whole thing. His own character development.
Well, yeah, because at the end they have like probably the most important scene in the entire episode is the bonfire on the beach, and
they
the
like
moment where Zuko
apart each other like psychologically.
But there's like the moment where Zuko's like saying, he's like, I'm angry with myself, and like, all that. He's confused about everything. He said like, I'm confused. I don't know what's the difference between right and wrong anymore. Which is interesting, because that kind of implies that even though Zuko made bad decisions, he's always trying to do the right thing because he's confused about what I don't know what's right and wrong anymore. Whereas like other people like Azula is actually malicious, you know? So you kind of see, because like he says that and she's just like, you're pathetic, or I don't know what she said. She said something along those lines.
And like, you know, they pick apart each and every one of them, like psychologically, you know. Ty Lee has her own issues, May has her own issues, Zuko has her own issues, and then Azula just goes, well, don't look at me, you know, I'm fine. My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, though, but it still hurt.
Yeah, but you see, like, she kind of comes off in a way, like, she makes it come off as if it doesn't affect, like, her mother thinking she was a monster as a kid doesn't affect her at all. Like, oh, it's fine.
But you can
but
tell
it definitely
that it
does. And that comes into play more, like, later on, like, you know, closer to the end of the season. But we'll talk about
like
that
the first
in a few weeks.
time that she actually seemed like a person, even if it was only for an instant.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I do love that line, though. She was right, though, but it still hurt.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because I did sort of. And then it's like you see like the Zuko May relationship, you know, they break up, but then by the end they get back together, you know, it's like
yeah, I've always been so iffy on their relationship because it's like this is either like really good for them or really bad for them, and I can't tell which.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, But this episode kind of explores their relationship a little bit, which is nice because you know before this you're just kind of like, oh yeah, they started dating. And then you're just kind of like, okay, like you didn't really get to know it that well.
There was no build up to it or understanding of it.
Yeah, no. This is, but yeah. Again, this is the episode that you never thought you wanted, but now that it's there, you can't imagine the show without it.
I do love this episode. However, I do find like every 3 minutes I need to cringe at whatever thing that they're doing, trying to interact like normal people.
Yeah. Especially like I feel like Ty Lee is the one who can interact with normal people the best. You know?
It's not in a normal way, but it's certainly the most positive of the four of them.
Right. Because like Azula's like, oh, how do you get all these guys after you? And she's like, oh, yeah, you just gotta, like, she knows how to get guys after. She's like, you just gotta laugh at everything they say, even if it's not funny. And then you gotta. Well, that sounds really shallow and stupid. Or I don't know what she said something like that. Let's do it. I also love how like at the end they decide to go back and trash the party. Like
yes,
like they kicked you out for good reason. If I remember, did they get kicked out? I think they did.
Yeah, they got kicked out
because Zuko, like the one guy was talking to May and Zuko got like super jealous and just like threw him across the room. That's right.
It wasn't quite that he threw him though. He really just
punched him,
striked him. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But no, I love the moment where like Zuko goes to like the old beach house that their family used to go to when they were kids.
And he stuff out of it and
he like sees the picture, but like he's like you kind of see like this little moment of him like remembering, you know, the good old days when, you know, his childhood before like his life sucked. And it's kind of you kind of get this implication like him that's what he wants to gain again. He wants to gain that like simple like happy life where his family at least seemed happy together. And it's like it's kind of this idea that like that's what he wanted all along. That's why he wanted to come back home. That's why he wanted his father to accept him again. But it's like no matter what, it's never going to be the same. I mean, especially considering the fact that their mother is just, you know, gone. Not gone. I mean, she's not dead. She's just
Is
Gone.
she not? Whatever. We'll find out later.
Sorry. Yeah, that's spoiler. Whoops.
I don't quite remember.
Okay.
But
Well.
I believe that is all we have. What?
They already you did. They did say it. They did reveal that already in
Well, he said that she.
Okay. Well, we'll get there.
Was
we'll get
exiled,
there.
I think, at some point.
Yeah. We'll get there. We'll talk about that.
But I believe that's all we have for this episode, right?
Yeah. I'll stop there. But yeah, it's a really good episode.
Yes, definitely.
A good way. We really explore Zuko's turmoil. That's, he's very confused, all that. So we got a decent development of that throughout the season, because obviously the setup for Zuko's character in this season is a lot different than the others. He's finally, accepted back home, but it's not the same. Not what he. It's what he thought he wanted, but not what he truly wanted. Yeah. Next we have the Avatar and the Fire Lord. So this episode gives us some very important backstory.
This is with the dreams, right?
Yeah. Well, no, not dreams.
Wait, no, that's later. This is the vision of Roku and the Fire Lord. Oh, yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, so Aang talks to Roku. Roku goes through his backstory, tells Aang about his backstory, while Zuko is reading history about the Fire Lord Sozin, the Fire Lord who started the war.
Right.
So he's
his grandfather.
His great-grandfather. He's Zuko's great-grandfather. Yes. Because if you remember, the Fire Lord remember the backstory episode where it showed like the Fire Lord died and then Ozai became the Fire Lord?
Yeah, I don't remember what the name.
His name was Azulon. His father is Sozin.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's 100 years, so it makes sense that it would have been.
Yeah.
And like when the war started, Sozin was already like not old, but decently old.
I thought he was old.
Yeah, so like it makes sense that over 100 years Zuko would be great grandson of Sozin, not grandson.
Yeah, I get you.
But anyways, so you learn the much needed backstory. Turns out that
they were friends.
Roku, yeah, they were best friends. Roku and Sozin were best friends, and it's kind of cool because like you see, it's kind of interesting to see like what it would be like what being the Avatar was like in a normal world, normal circumstances. Because like so far we've only seen Aang, who has to kind of deal with the war, and he found out when he was 12 years old, and he has to like struggle to like travel through the world to find teachers because and
he has this whole big goal to defeat the Fire Lord.
Whereas this we see sort of like what it would be like if the Avatar kind of had all the time in the world to train and learn, and all the nations get along. So, there's
no big rush. There's no big fight that he has to go to.
It's more of a casually thing. It's kind of nice to see like, oh, in a normal world, this is how the Avatar's life would go. He learns about it. He learns that he's the Avatar when he's 16, like they're supposed to. And all this stuff. And there's also some cool details like the fact that Roku was friends with Gyatso.
Yeah, and he says like
some friendships
last over a lifetime or something.
Yeah, which is cool because it's like maybe that's like why, like when they found out Aang was, they find out that you're the Avatar when you're like a little kid, like a baby or whatever, but they don't tell you till you're 16, right? So maybe Gyatso chose to be like Aang's main guardian and teacher because he was the Avatar, and he was friends with the past Avatar, so he wanted to continue the friend. Like, so that's kind of a cool little detail. I like that a lot.
Roku gets home from mastering all 4 elements. He gets married, and Sozin's just
at his wedding. Sozin's like, "Hey,
I want to take over the world." It's like, essentially, no, shut up.
Well, it's really interesting how they set up, because you always kind of have this thought of like, how did the war start? Why did the war start, right? Because it's like, okay, obviously the Fire Nation is trying to expand and like take over the world, but like, why did that? When did that start? Why did it start?
And Sozin views it as like, his nation is in a period of prosperity and peace, and he wants to bring that to the other nations as
He wants
well.
to share. I want to share our prosperity with the rest of the world. That's the way that he views it. And if you notice, that's what they've told. That's the propaganda they spread to the Fire Nation people. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
we're just spreading our prosperity to the rest of the world, the best nation in the world, and we're spreading it to the rest of the world. We're just helping the rest of the world. Like, so the rest of the nation kind of like sees it that way because they're, the propaganda they're fed.
Yeah.
And Roku's like, no, you can't do that. That's, you can't just,
there's a balance
try
to
to take over
things.
the
You
world.
can't just do that.
Yeah. Cause like, if you notice, like, if it's sort of implied that like the Earth Kingdom is very separated in a lot of ways. They're very like, they have some really like kind of,
At least Bossing Say is. Maybe
yeah,
not
it's like
they,
but it's like they have sort of like a very, they have a very well defined like class system where there's like poor villagers who can barely get enough food, and then there's also like the rich people. Even like Bossing Say was separated, but there was walls separating the high class and the lower class. So it is implied that like the Earth at the time, the Earth Kingdom probably had not as good of like life for all of its citizens as the Fire Nation, but
maybe, yeah.
Going to war and trying to take them over isn't the best answer to that. It's like,
yeah, maybe there's other solutions before war.
Yeah.
But then Sozin goes through with it anyway, starting with setting up the Fire Nation colonies in the Earth Kingdom. And Roku finds out and barges into his palace and is like, stop this. And Sozin attacks him. He gets destroyed and humiliated. And then they like don't talk to each other for like 25 years or something like that.
And then, which in those 25 years, I think it's implied that Sozin didn't really continue his expansion.
Yeah.
He just kind of, because he knew like Roku would come for him,
kill him,
which is why when the time comes and Sozin has a chance to save Roku, he thinks, he's like, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't, because he says to Roku, like his last words before Roku dies, he's like, with you gone, my plans are suddenly possible, and then he lets him die. Like it's an intense moment.
I do really like how his dragon, Roku's dragon, curls up with him as the ash covers them.
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Sozin, the next like 12 years, Sozin started getting ready to start the war, because the war doesn't fully start until 12 years after Roku dies, right? Because obviously that's when Aang turns 12. And like, when Aang finds out he's the Avatar, all that stuff happens. So for the next 12 years, there's sort of this looming threat that full-on war is going to start, but it doesn't. But then, because 12 years later, when Aang is 12 years old, that's when the comet comes. And they show that the Fire Nation used the power of the comet to wipe out the air nomads, which actually makes a lot of sense, because you're kind of like, okay, would the Fire Nation really have been able to wipe them all out that easily? You know what I mean? Like
with the comet, probably. Yeah.
With the power of the comet, yeah. But Aang had already run away at that point, and so yeah, and that's obviously why it was named Sozin's Comet. But yeah, so they used the comet to jumpstart the war, and then 100 years later, still going on. They attempted to find and locate the Avatar in those 100 years and never did. You also find out at the end, Zuko was reading about this because he got like a anonymous like note saying like, you need to learn the true history or whatever, and he assumes that it was probably Iroh who had that sent to him, and so he goes to see Iroh and he's like, come on, what does this tell me? That like this is all stuff I already knew. This is all history. He's like, the secret history. Don't you mean it should be called the history that everybody knows? And I was like, there's another important detail that you don't know. And he's like, yeah, he goes,
well, the letter that he got was like, you need to find out about the death of your great-grandfather.
Yes.
But then he goes, at the end of the story, Sozin was still alive. And he says,
yes.
like, what's up with that? It's like, and I was just like, no,
he
wasn't.
He's like, you have more than one great-grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he is like, Roku is your great-grandfather. So
the mother's side, yeah.
Yeah, so Zuko's mother is Roku's granddaughter.
Right.
So he's like, this explains the conflict that's always within you, you know, which I thought was a weird thing because I was like, well, I mean, yeah, but there's no conflict in Azula. She's pretty much pure evil, you know, and she also is, you know, the great granddaughter of Roku. But no, like,
yeah.
it definitely adds an interesting extra level where it's like, but yeah, that's interesting.
You know, that I just thought of this. How many people in the world of Avatar are like descendants of some form of the Avatar?
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there would have to be, especially considering how far back the Avatars go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, probably a lot. Although there may have been some Avatars who never had kids too. So there's definitely, you know, but I mean, like I feel like Avatar Kuruk probably didn't have kids because he died in like his 30s or something. I don't know.
Who?
He's like the waterbending Avatar before Aang. So like before Aang is Roku, before Roku is Kyoshi, before Kyoshi is Avatar Kuruk. I only know
he mentioned, yeah.
I only know the history of him because I like looked it up, but he's like, there's the last episode he's mentioned, and like he's briefly hinted at the end of the first season. You remember when Ko is like, I know you from a past life, something about stealing the face of the one you loved, and that was Avatar Kuruk.
Oh.
Like, so, but yeah, he was like an Avatar who died like in his 30s or something. Because he like fought with the spirits a lot or something, including Ko. But yeah, I only know the history because I was like looking up history of like past Avatars and stuff one time. But yeah.
Weird.
But yeah, no, I'm assuming, yeah, there's probably a lot of people who are descended from Avatars in the past and don't even know it, you know?
Well, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, this is definitely an important backstory episode. And Iroh finally talks to Zuko because before this, Iroh wasn't even talking. Like Zuko was like
first
trying
taste of his new voice, right?
I think it is, yeah.
Because I do remember as he was talking, then I was like, oh yeah, you said that there's a new voice actor now, and like I could tell a little bit.
Yeah, no, you can tell. Yeah, which part, like, there's theories that like that's why Iroh's not in season 3 as much, or like he doesn't talk as much in it because it was a different voice. They didn't want to like, they wanted to use it as little as possible or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that was the way it was planned already. I don't know, but there's theories like that. But yeah, no. So yeah, good episode, much needed backstory. It's I think it's really important to kind of fully understand how the war began.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like at the beginning of the season, like Roku says something like, remember when Roku appeared to Aang when he was like in the water at the first episode of the season, and Roku says something along the lines of like it's my fault that you have to deal with this mess. Like I should have stopped the war, but I did. Whatever.
You inherited my problems.
It's like, yeah. And then this is where we see what he meant by that, because Roku had a chance to stop Sozin before it ever even happened, but then he chose to leave him because they were friends.
All right.
But yeah. I don't know if I have a lot more to say about this one.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
It's good. Next, we have The Runaway.
Right.
So
this episode.
This one's good. This one's good.
Yeah.
So
The Runaway.
There's yeah. So here you kind of see like get some interesting development with Katara and Toph, especially seeing like you see like the way that like Toph is very she's very much like in the mindset of like, because I'm away from my parents, I can just kind of do what I want, no rules kind of thing, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
She's very like, yeah. Whereas Katara is like basically everybody's mother, Yeah. So there's kind of a conflict there. Like there's that moment where they're like, no, we don't think you're that motherly. And then she's like, Aang, stop. What did she say? Stop itching your eyes or whatever. He's just like, yes, ma'am.
And speak clearly when you talk.
Speak clearly when you talk. Yes, ma'am. He's like, we don't think you're like a mother. Katara is basically the mother of the group for sure.
Well, definitely, yeah.
But yeah, so
there's all the scenes where
they're
Toph
like,
and everyone are using earthbending and other bendings to scam like the little street side games.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more extreme until they trick a like nobleman into thinking that he ran over Toph, and Saka comes out in a guard and he just starts piling coin sacks in his arms.
See, that was the only one they did where I was a little bit like, okay, that's kind of
because like
the other ones, they're like, okay, you're just kind of cheating a game where that's kind of cheating you anyways. So you're kind of like, okay, whatever. But like, you're cheating cheaters. Whereas this is like, the guy's just minding his own business, riding in his carriage, and you just kind of trick him out of his money,
Like, but, he could have been a bad guy.
Maybe.
But we didn't know. They didn't show that.
Yeah. This is also the episode with Hockey.
Hockey, yeah.
It's the only episode with it, sadly.
Poor Hockey gets sent out with a letter.
At the end. Here, we're going to send a letter to your parents. Where's Hockey? They didn't even ask Saka.
Yeah.
That creates one of the funniest parts of the episode where he's like, Katara and Toph are mad at each other, just like, ooh, we could send a letter. I could use Hockey to send a letter to Katara. We can say it's from Toph.
I know,
and it's her apologizing.
Toph can't write.
Can't believe we forgot Toph can't write. Yeah, we're idiots. How about we send one to Toph saying it's from Katara? I think we'd run into the same a similar problem.
And then Toph and Katara finally explode at each other. And then they make up and they go on their own heist.
Which turns out to be a trap from Sparky Boom Man. This is where he first calls him Combustion Man, I think.
Oh, right.
Because he's like, Sparky Boom Man. I'm starting to think that name doesn't fit. And then he's like, I know, Combustion Man.
Good work, Saka.
I also love how Saka, like he shows up and like Sokka's dumb nickname thing, I love how like Aang just completely goes along with it. He's like, I think Sparky Boom Man is here. Like he doesn't even, Aang just kind of goes with it. He's not like
no judgment. He's just like, oh, cool. I'll do it. Yeah. Why not?
Saka came up with the nickname and Aang's like, yeah, that's who he is. Okay, cool. But and then there's like moments like the interesting things where like Katara was trying to be smart, using her sweat for water bending. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. And
was this the episode where Toph, like, she bent a rock to send it flying at Sparky Boom Man, and he blew it up with his mind, but a single pebble went through and hit him right in the forehead eye.
Yeah, and then
he messed up his next shot.
Yeah, so
in his face,
which is actually a good setup for later on. We haven't gotten to that yet. That's next episode we talk about it.
The finale.
it's somewhere in the last 10 episodes. But
Mhm.
anyways, so yeah, and you actually get some good like character moments, especially with like Sokka, where Sokka's talking to Toph about how he's like, I don't even really remember what my mom looked like because, ever since
Mhm.
then, Katara's been like a mother to me. And like, whenever I picture my mother's face, I always picture her face. Like, there's a little, like, I love that.
Mhm.
So there's good little character building moments there.
It's there's so many moments in this show where they get like very heavy for a kid show, but it works so well with character
Mm-hmm.
development and
Yeah. I mean,
all that.
it's interesting because it's like these aren't just like regular kids. Like they all they're dealing with things that no kid should have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of more intense. Like none of them have like a good, perfect like childhood, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
like Aang did until he found out he was the Avatar and then left and got frozen. Then obviously, but like
Right, yeah.
Katara and Sokka, their mom died when they were young, and then like they had to deal, and then like their village was attacked multiple times, and then their dad left, so they've had to deal with like the war and stuff,
Mhm.
and Toph always had to grow up dealing with like hiding her true self from her parents, kind of, and like
Yeah.
her parents never fully understanding her, and so it's like each one of them kind of has to deal with like these things that, you know,
Not to mention the war.
yes, the looming war constant, and like especially like
Mhm.
right now they are,
The center of the war at the moment, yeah.
yeah, they're doing all these things for the war, and they're trying to help Aang, so Aang can fight the Fire Lord. Things that like again, children should never have to deal with, but like they're kind of forced into it, where like Aang's 12, Toph is 12,
Aang is 12 and
Sokka's
he is going to save the world.
right, exactly. I always really liked that aspect of the show. Like they could have easily made it that the characters were like a little older, like, even if they were still like teenagers, like a little older, they could have made it that like Aang was 16, 17, 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they didn't. They went with the child route. And I think that
It
really,
adds an interesting layer to it, yeah.
yeah, where it's like, it adds this interesting story where it's like the kids are forced to sort of deal with adult situations.
Mhm.
Um, so like Aang is constantly having people trying to like attack him, kill him. All this pressure's on him, and he's literally a 12-year-old kid. I mean, technically he's
Yes.
112, but physically, mentally 12.
He was passed out for 100 of those. They don't count.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't age at all. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, no. So that's like really, I think a really interesting aspect of the show. And it's
Yeah,
not even
definitely.
just those characters. It's also like Zuko. Zuko's only 16 in the show. He was banned. He was burnt and banished when he at age 13. Like
Yeah,
that's intense.
that's not that's just not okay.
Yeah, I think that it just really intensify like their age really just intensifies the situations because it kind of makes it like
Yep.
you like adult you would expect like if adults were doing it, it would be different. It's just more intense that it's like,
I
oh, kids have to deal with all this stuff.
I do remember the few episodes that I watched of Legend of Korra. They're like, what are their age range, the main characters in
um
that? Or are they
I
like 16 or 18?
they're like late teens, early 20s. By the end of it, Cora's like the show, I think the whole show I think takes place over the course of like 3 or 4 years. So by the
Oh,
end,
really?
Cora's like early 20s, I think, but I think she starts out closer to like 16, 17, 18. I don't know exactly, but
Yeah, which
yeah.
I think the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, they're not doing kids anymore.
Yeah. Which like makes sense because like, okay, now that the world is in not at war, she's not forced to do all this stuff at a young age like Aang was.
Yeah.
It's kind of a completely different, that's one thing that does make it a completely different show. They are very
Hmm.
different shows. Korra is good in its own way. I mean, I don't think it's as good as Avatar, but like it has its own strengths that make it's different. It's very different, a very different show, you know, which is good. I'm glad that they didn't like just kind of try to do the same thing over again, you know, like they could have easily kind of just tried to replicate the formula. Yeah. But they it's the same universe and everything,
completely
but it's
different sort of timeline.
Yeah, but like the style, the way that, you know, completely different stories. And characters, and you know, it's just completely different. You know, it's very different. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, yeah, The Runaway is a good episode. I say that about every episode, but it's like,
I mean, they're all good. What's next?
Next, we have The Puppet Master.
The creepy old lady.
So this is like a good like Halloween episode, you know. Like, yeah, this is definitely the like they were definitely trying to go for a horror vibe in this episode, you know,
or at least creepy. Maybe not quite horror, but
yeah, they were going more for like the like, you know, like, yeah, I mean, because it's like, oh, there's like something mysterious going on during the full moon at night, and it's yeah.
And then when Toph like said, "I hear screaming under the mountain," like, what?
They just kind of ignore it. They're like, "Oh, it's probably you're probably just scared from the story or whatever, you know, whatever." And ever since, what's her name, Hama? Yeah, ever since Hama comes onto screen, she always has this somewhat creepy vibe to her.
Yeah,
like she just shows up in middle of the woods, like in middle of the night, and it's kind of like, okay, out of nowhere. And then like, okay, so like when I first watched it, I was like a little creeped out by her, but then once you found out that she was a waterbender, I was like,
Southern Water Tribe, even same as Saka and Katara.
I was like, okay, that's interesting. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna teach you some waterbending techniques, and you're like, oh, okay. And then, but then it just kind of,
it just like slowly slopes down, darker and darker.
Yeah. I do like
it starts off with like pulling water out of the air, and then pulling water out of flowers, which very clearly kills them in an area around her.
Right, which
and
like
finally blood bending.
Yeah, which she can only do in the full moon. Yeah, it's really creepy, and like there's that like the full moon is out, and she's like I've never felt more alive, and you can see like her veins popping out and stuff, like,
yeah, and she like curls her fingers like claws.
Yeah, the way it's like shot and like put together is a very like creepy, somewhat horror kind of like vibe to it. Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's like Katara's like, I don't ever want to do that, but then by the end of the episode she does. She has to, and she's like, now you're a bloodbender, and you know, it messes Katara up. Because I mean, you got to think about it. Katara is only a 14-year-old girl. Like this is gonna mess you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this also kind of reinforces just how powerful Katara is, though. Yeah. Which, like, I mean, you already kind of got that now. It's like she became a waterbending master really quickly, like when she trained with Paku. So like you kind of already figured that she's like a naturally just really powerful waterbender. But like this really shows, because like Hama has spent years developing the bloodbending skill, and Katara just kind of figures it out.
Try, yeah,
and did it to the point where she was overpowering.
Well, before that, they even mentioned that Hama was trying to bloodbend Katara, she, used her own bending to like override that.
Yeah.
To gain control back, which she even came right out and said, I am a more powerful bender than you.
Yes.
And so while she didn't know how to blood bend at the time, her own like sort of force of will over water overpowered Hana's.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and I like I don't know, that fight at the end was really cool though, because it was like they were like water bending, and like
Mm-hmm.
you saw they were like tearing trees apart by pulling all the water out of trees and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I really like when they like take different bending and sort of like expand it in a way that logically makes sense, but that you never really fully think of. You're like, yeah, of course you can pull water out of the air. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like it started like in the last episode, it was like she was using her sweat to do it, and then like here it's like, you know, they're pulling it out of trees, and then like, you know, blood
Yeah.
bending. It's like you kind of like it's like, you know, especially with like other things too, like with earthbenders, you know, you kind of like, oh yeah, metal bending, you know.
And sand
um
bending and all that.
yeah, you kind of see things that you never really thought about, because like when you hear earthbending you think, oh yeah, people throwing rocks around, you know what I mean, like, but then you realize like there you can do, there's so much more to it. You know, water bending, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of, there's more to it than that. It's
Or
really
like
cool how they expand a lot of this.
back in the swamps, bending the water in the vines so you can
Yes,
make
yeah,
this weird
yeah,
vine golem.
yeah, yeah,
I,
which
I
is
did want to, I guess this isn't really important, but I do want to mention in D&D there's a spell, I believe that's called Blight.
mhm.
It's not like you don't really actually pull moisture out of anything, but it's necrotic damage, if I remember correctly. It just kind of like decays whatever it hits, like the same, like
Oh
sort of
yeah.
siphoning water. It's a very cool
Well,
spell.
right, because if you think about it, like water is sort of part of what really gives you life, and like siphoning the water would really just kind of
Hmm.
pull the life out of you, almost. Yeah.
I almost want to, so I don't look like a fool to my fellow D&D nerds, to look up exactly what the spell is, but that's pointless.
Yeah. Um. But no, I love like so. So one thing, like I've, you know, watched a lot of like YouTube stuff and like done a lot of
Hmm.
research on like how to do like good world building and stuff for like stories and stuff. And one
Right.
thing they say is like when it comes to like creating a magic system in your universe, it's always good to sort of make it in a way where like you establish the rules of it, and then you can, but try to when you're creating new powers, try to, because you know
Expand it.
you want to create new powers as you go to make it more interesting, make it a little more interesting. But like instead of just creating new powers, create powers that make sense with what was already established. So
Yeah.
far in this
Take
show, it's
things a step further, a step
right,
deeper instead of spreading outward.
instead of just adding something new. So because
Yeah.
so far, you know, it's like all the new bending things we've learned, we've been getting, make sense with the bending we've already had. It's just an expansion of what's already there. You know, metal bending is just an expansion beyond earth bending. So it's like sand bending, and you know, the blood bending, and then there was like lightning bending. It's just kind of, you know,
Right.
expanding of fire, and then we have, you know, with Azula, she's doing blue fire. It just kind of gives it a different
Yeah.
visual
And even with lightning
aspect.
bending, it's not just simply fire bending, it is fire bending in the style of water bending.
Well, the lightning redirection is
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
lightning
should
bending.
specify that.
Yeah, the lightning bending in and of itself isn't where you're shooting lightning,
Right.
but it is very different than fire bending. It's like a very precise like hit, like a little
Hmm.
that like kills, that will kill you really easily. You know, it's not.
I did find the spell. Necrotic energy washes over a creature of your choice within blah blah blah, draining moisture from and vitality from it. And then
Okay.
a little bit lower, if you target a non-magical plant that isn't a creature, such as a tree or a shrub, it doesn't make a saving throw. It simply withers and dies.
Okay, gotcha.
Very similar to their
Like
draining the
pulling.
water from plants. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that is interesting. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's definitely a good like expansion to the bending and how you know. I love like the introduction of blood bending. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Because
Um,
they've been gradually like poking holes at these like little ideas of different bending styles from the main four.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
this is a very like extreme example of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, it makes sense. It's like, yeah, the human body is made mostly of water, you know, like, but yeah. So yeah, we can probably move on if you want.
Yeah, the main thing about that is blood bending. That's the most interesting part of it.
Yeah, it is. Next we have Nightmares and Daydreams, which...
This is the one that I thought the other one was.
Yeah. So the best part of this episode is probably when Appa and Momo start talking.
Yes.
There's like... Oh my gosh. So yeah, so basically... Aang can't... They arrive at the rendezvous point for the invasion. The invasion's 4 days away. Aang is... Aang's so stressed about it that he can't sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's having interesting nightmares.
Forgets his pants to the invasion.
You're not wearing any pants. I'm ready to fight you, Fire Lord. What about the mathematics test? Math test? I forgot all about the math test. Because, you know, that makes sense.
Abacus, like, crushes him.
Yep. But yeah, and some of the dream sequences here are really interesting. Like there's one that I think is really interesting. It's like creepy. It's like kind of creepy and trippy. It's like he sees like Toph with no eyes, and then like all this. Right. It's like that one is one of my favorites. That one's like really interesting. And then like there's the moment he's like under the ice and he looks up and he sees Zuko standing above him, and like there's all these like little interesting things, and he sees like his friends all kind of like dying and stuff. Like that one was really intense and interesting, whereas like a lot of the other ones were more funny.
Yeah,
I love that like they're each one is going through talking about how they're worried about him. Like, you really need to get sleep. Yeah, we're really worried about you. And then it cuts over to Appa. He's standing on his hind legs and he just goes, "You've got to take care of yourself." And
the visual of Appa standing on his hind legs is so like odd.
It's hilarious. I love it. It's just and then talking, and then like Momo starts going at him, and he's like, then Appa's like, "I am sick and tired of this guy," and then Appa and Momo like start having a Sam, and Aang's just like, "What, guys? What should I do about this? Do about what? This?" Like they're fighting.
It's like this whole dramatic duel, and like Appa has like 4 swords or 3 swords at first, each with 2 hands.
Yeah, I love just this whole like hallucination section, and then like the guru shows up in his hallucination with like 6 arms, chakras.
Everybody loves chakras.
Yeah, I love it. And then like Appa and Momo are fighting, and like the sheep are cheering for them. So I'm like, Appa, Momo. Like it's just hilarious.
It's such a like, it's just such a whiplash from the normalcy comparatively of other episodes.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And then like I love like he starts going at everybody about what happened in his dreams. I had a nightmare that Saka, you had to climb and you couldn't climb fast enough, so climb that mountain.
Well, we died because of your tiny bladder, Toph.
Because you have to go to the bathroom, yeah. Ah, jeez.
And then finally they make him a sheep bed from shearing all the sheep.
Oh, he goes up, he's like, "Oh, another hallucination, a bed made out of clowns." We spent hours on that, and you just see all the naked sheep and that they sheared. But yeah, he finally falls asleep, and they have like a moment before he falls asleep where they're all like, "You can do this, Aang. We believe in you. It's okay." Like they kind of are very encouraging, you know.
Yeah.
You're the man, Twinkle Toes. And then he falls.
And then the final dream. No, Fire Lord, you're not wearing pants.
My royal parts are showing. It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is actually another story going on in this episode with Zuko.
Oh.
So
do tell.
You start off, you see Zuko, he's sort of like kind of living the perfect, pampered life. He gets everything what he wants, all of his servants are ready to do anything for him. And he goes to like May's house and he's like, what do you want? And she's like, oh, what is the one thing you would really want right now? And she's like, I really want a fruit tart with like blah, blah, blah. And he goes to the servants, hey, could you get that for us? It's just like, he's just like having all this perfect pick. But then he finds out about there's a war meeting going on that he never got an invitation to. And he's all worried about that. He's like, why didn't I get invited? What's going on? And he's like, I'm not going, but I want to go. Like, he's so conflicted on it. He's like, but then he goes, oh no, somebody arrived, like one of the people arrives and he's like, Zuko, we're expecting you. Your father's been waiting all this time. And he finally goes in and you don't see, like you see him go in and you don't see why, like what they talk about in the war room, but then you see him leave when he leaves. He's like, it was great. My father welcomed me. I was literally at his right hand and
I was a perfect prince during the whole meeting.
I was a perfect prince during the whole meeting. And May's like, that's great. And he's like, but I wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And like that I think is the perfect sort of setup for the next few episodes.
Yeah.
It's, this is the final kind of straw of his like conflict within himself throughout this, he's trying to find like, I think because ever since he made his decision at the end of season 2, you've seen this conflict constantly. Even at the end of season 2 there's a moment where he's just sitting there. He's like, I betrayed Uncle. What did I do? He seems very confused. And Azula's like, no, Uncle's the traitor. You helped, but he's still very confused about what he did even then, and this is sort of the final moment of him, like his confusion and his but yeah, do you have much more to say about this episode?
No, I guess not. The entire weirdness, I don't know. It's hard for me to handle that because it's just like, cool, I don't know what's happening anymore. Where is this going?
Oh yeah. No, it's hilarious. Jeez. But yeah, the next episode. So the next 2 episodes are the Day of the Black Sun, part 1 and 2.
Hell yeah.
So the invasion force finally arrives and they're finally ready for the invasion. I like how...
Can you remind me, what is the separation between these 2 episodes? Is like the first part of the invasion, like where they take the tower and then when they advance past the tower, or?
I think so. Like, it's like the episode ends when Aang like realizes the Fire Lord isn't there, and like
right. Okay.
I think the first one, and he's like, but he realizes nobody's in the city, I believe, somewhere around there. But anyways, so I one thing I think is really cool. I like how the beginning of the episode, Aang like is up and he's like, just had a great night's sleep and I'm ready for the invasion, and it's like, after the last episode, it's kind of like a continuation. It's like, it's like a little hint at the last episode.
Aang shaves his head, getting ready.
Mm-hmm. Oh
like, yeah, he's finally back to normal.
It's like, I'm finally ready for the world to know that the Avatar is alive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the invasion force arrives. One thing I was a little confused on though is last time we saw the invasion force, they had like the Fire Nation ship. They were disguised as the Fire Nation. They don't have that anymore at this point. I don't know why. Like, I don't know, because like they arrive in like water tribe boats now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They just kind of dropped that whole plot point.
Well, I mean, I guess they didn't really need it for the invasion, so maybe they dropped it. But then again, it could have been useful.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it could have been useful at least to get them in,
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just a minor nitpick.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a little weird. But yeah, so this is like a big one of those episodes. It's like a big culmination episode where like a bunch of characters come in, because like you see
the boulder and the hippo.
You see the boulder and the hippo. You see the swamp people. You see like the what's his name, the inventor guy and his son. and Haru and his father, and
Pipsqueak and the Duke.
Pipsqueak and the Duke. Like, it's like this big culmination where like a bunch of characters from before come together.
I did love the reunion of Toph, Hippo, and the Boulder. Hippo just picks her up like, it is good to see you, Blind Bandit. And she asks, are you two here for a rematch? Negatoro, the Boulder no longer fights for people's entertainment. The Boulder
fights for his country. Yeah, well,
sweet.
I think what's funny about that though is like, so the Boulder no longer does fights anymore, right? But he still talks. He still talks as if he's a WWE wrestler, like like it's just hilarious.
Like, that's just his personality, apparently.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah. There's also another instance of the Saka is bad at art in this episode. So the inventor is like, I followed your Saka. Thanks for sending me the designs for these subs. Because like, does Saka design the submarines that they made? He's like, thanks for sending me the designs. It was really hard to decipher your design. As it shows the picture, it's like, again, like a 2-year-old drew it.
It just looks like a fish with a couple of stick figures in it.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, so Sokka's going through a little bit of like, stage fright.
Yeah, I guess that's a more important part of this. Because like it's his plan, and he failed in front of everybody
delivering
to describe
it. Whereas his dad gets up there and he's like perfectly delivers it. Which I think that's sort of like a sort of setup for like later on in the episode. He finally is like, he was able to take lead when his father was injured. It was like, now he messed up then, but now it's like his real moment,
Which is like, on one hand, he's the adult. And so, of course, the two kids would be the one to take the one guard tower, and the adult would take the other. But also, Katara's the bender. She's probably like the most capable out of all three of them. So why didn't the two guys team up?
And then she go alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's fine though. Just I mean, you can occasionally find little nitpicks,
They're like whatever though.
Yeah.
And all the inventions, the submarines, Appa's armor, the tanks.
Well, yeah, Appa's armor was actually being built during the last episode when Aang was having trouble sleeping.
Those tanks are cool. Like the little caterpillar stuff.
Yeah. They are really cool.
And how they like the one like reached over the guard tower and like crushed it when it was on top of it.
Yeah, and I think those things are controlled mostly through earthbending, right?
Well, yeah, because they get glimpses of the inside, and they're like doing that like sort of like ski pushing, like they do when they're like sliding up a hillside or something like that.
One thing I've noticed though about this is, so like people from all over the world are like helping here. There's some people, from like, there's like, I think there was some like Earth Kingdom soldiers here, right? And it's like just regular Earth Kingdom soldiers. I think so.
Yes,
yeah, definitely. And stuff like that. And like Southern Water Tribe. Why does the Northern Water Tribe never help anyone? They just kind of stay up in the north and don't care about the rest of the world. Like what?
Yeah, I guess they never.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, they could have like gotten. Even
though they were attacked and like brought into the war in like at the end of season 1.
Like unlike Boomy, who's just like waiting for something to happen for him to escape on his own, they could have gotten Katara's waterbending master or
just some of their soldiers or something. Because like I realized, I was like, the only waterbenders they have are the swamps people and Katara. Those are the only waterbenders they have in this fight. I'm like, if the Northern Water Tribe was here.
Yeah, I guess they really. Like, even the kid and his dad, who they saved from the prison, were there. But no one from the Northern Water Tribe.
Yeah,
like, it seems like that's the only place that they didn't pick anyone up that they met.
Yeah, exactly. What which is like, I don't know. I mean, the Northern Water Tribe, I guess, is like kind of selfish, I guess, compared to the rest of the world. They just kind of like to stay up there by themselves.
Maybe, I don't
Like
know.
the only time you ever see them fight is when they're defending themselves, when they're attacked.
Yeah. It
Because
was
like,
weird.
and it's implied that they're not really involved in the war that much, too.
Yeah, they're
Like,
like one of the safe havens with Boss and
yeah,
Say.
like it was implied that they were attacked at one point many years ago. Because remember, they had like the old Fire Nation uniforms that they were using, and
Right.
he's like, and Saka was like, they don't look like that anymore. How old are these? 100 years? Are these 100 years old? And the one guy's like 85. So it's like implied that like last time they were attacked by like the Fire Nation was like 85 years ago. So like, so yeah. Like they don't even like help their what is it do they call it, like their sister tribe or whatever they call it in the south.
Yeah.
But
I do really like all like technology though,
oh yeah.
because like using the water bending and earth bending to power this stuff, or like even when it was just like the torpedoes that were like covered in ice so that they could water bend them out of the chute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's really
It's
cool.
all like, oh, we don't need mechanisms, we can just bend this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Yeah, I like it a lot. And then like Aang also gets a new glider, so that's good.
With a snack compartment.
I'm sure that'll come in handy. And then he's flying. He's hungry. Oh, it did come in handy.
I do love how he just like kind of like rapidly dispensed a ton of them, and he just caught a bunch as the others just rained down on his face.
Yeah. So, but yeah, throughout this episode, you see Zuko. He's like writing a letter to
May,
and he leaves, and he's like, "I'm sorry, May," and then it's not until the second of these two episodes that you see like him go to like his father, which is really a big moment. We can talk about that in a minute. But the second part is when the eclipse actually happens.
Right.
So they realize
Aang flies back, tells everyone that, the city's empty. They are hiding because they know the eclipse is happening.
Yes. And they're like, oh, well, they got to be hiding somewhere. Let's find them. And they find that there's like catacombs underneath the ground that they're hiding in. There's like old like tunnels and stuff.
One guy that they come across and just like, Fire Lord's that way. Just leave me alone. And they're just like, thanks.
So they go into the Fire Lord's chamber, and who do they find? Azula. There to distract them, basically. And she's like, yeah, I actually knew about your plan to invade for months now. Because, while they were pretending to be Kyoshi warriors, the Earth King mentioned it. He's like, yeah, they're actually planning on attacking on like during the eclipse or whatever. The fire or the Earth King told them, thinking they were the Kyoshi warriors.
And like you would expect her to be, because she has no firebending at the moment, so you'd expect her to be like at least somewhat less confident than she usually is, but she's not.
Well,
and
she's
then the Dai Li come out and protect her, and she's just so skilled at dodging that it's fine.
Yeah, she's just running away from them essentially.
Buying time.
And then there's like the moment where they're like, tell us where he is, and Toph's like, I know you can lie, and she's like, I'm pretty good at lying. And then she like says like, I don't remember exactly what she said.
I'm a 10-foot tall purple alligator bear or something like that, blah blah blah.
And then she goes, I admit you're good.
which is kind of interesting, because I think the whole thing about, well, no, even like with practice, you can't stop yourself from like having a physical reaction from lying. But I think that physical reaction stems from everyone learning from an early age that lying is bad. And so you have like an innate guilt over it. But knowing Azula, she wouldn't have that. she
I
wouldn't
think,
have any sort of regret or guilt at
well,
lying.
she grew up having lying as just a normal thing she did. You know, you remember
Yeah,
Zuko was like,
exactly.
Azula always lies, you know, and like, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's just an innate part of who she is, really.
Mm-hmm.
But and I also love moments like, you know, where she's there like sitting there and like uh Sokka's like, wait, while we're chasing her, we're not finding the Fire Lord. And then Toph goes, you're wasting all our time. And she's like, yeah, I think your friend just said that. And because you can't see me, I'm rolling my eyes right now.
Yeah.
I'll roll your whole head. I love that.
I also do love that. Like, Toph like shoved the dialy into like one of the metal support beams and like crushed it in on him, so he was stuck there. Like, because I love the whole dynamic that Toph is the only person ever that can metal bend right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so any earthbenders are just like, oh, I'm useless now. Like, I cannot do anything because I am stuck here.
And then there's all these moments of Sokka just completely like fangirling over her the whole time. He's like, I'm so glad we added you to the group.
Mm-hmm.
What would we do without you? I'm so glad you invented metal bending. He's just I love that.
I don't know. I take Sokka's side on that a lot in like throughout the entirety of knowing Toph, because she's just so cool. Because like the way she sees the world, the way like she's a master earthbender, the way she invents metal bending, and how it's just like direct, forceful. Like it like most of the time, like even when she first invents metal bending, it is just punch metal and it bends. There is no like trick. There is just sheer force of brute strength and will.
Yeah. Yep. And like, I don't know. I think her like ability of like her unique way of seeing the world and like being able to feel the vibrations and stuff has like saved their lives so many times.
Yeah.
So like her being added to the group was like clearly a really big thing. But yeah, so they distract and then they're like, all right, we're going to ignore you. And that's when Azula
brings up Suki.
Which, because like the thing is, last time we saw Suki,
they were beaten.
They were fighting. We saw her fighting Azula. Then they were disguised as the Kyoshi warriors. So you're like, wait, what actually happened to Suki? And now this is the first time you mention her, and she's like, oh yeah. And he's like, where is she? Where is she? You know, and it's like, but because she knew like that would be a good way to distract them more.
And it worked. It worked until she finally just goes, oop, looks like the firebending's back on.
Yeah, she just like casually, she's just like, looks like the firebending's back on. I'm like, bye guys.
I do love that line.
But then, and then they obviously regroup and they're like, we got to leave. But it was all a trap. The Fire Nation is there. Their balloons go towards the shore to destroy their subs.
Yep.
So the only way for them to leave is on Appa. But obviously Appa can't carry everyone.
So they only take the young ones.
Yeah. And this is where the balloons come back into play.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you see like smaller balloons that are like the same size and design as that original one, but then you also see the
like
massive ones.
Zeppelins like made of metal.
Yeah, like they
with like the weird like head on the end of it, whatever that
is
like supposed to be.
Spent the past several months, however long it's been since, I think it's like several months since they got that. They really worked hard at producing more. They really got hard at work perfecting it.
I don't know, whenever I look back on when I like think of this show, those Zeppelins are like ingrained as part of the Fire Nation to me. But they were only like in these like last 12 episodes or so.
Yeah.
Which is really odd.
Well, yeah, because this is where they're introduced, yeah.
but it's also like it shows just how like well they implemented the balloons in
Well,
this.
yeah, and like even like in the finale, like the last few episodes, they are a very important, aspect of the climax too. So yeah, but yeah, so they have to leave, and
all the adults behind. Yeah,
they leave to go to the Southern Air Temple. But there's one other important aspect of this episode that we did not touch on, which is Zuko. This is probably one of the most important episodes for Zuko. So
I love this scene.
Yeah. So this episode is essentially the completion of Zuko's character arc, right? So like he's still in the rest of the he's still in the rest of the season. He's still important, but the rest of the season is more about what he does after he's, made his decision, after he's fully committed to who he really is. This is the episode
to his goal in this episode.
This is
and
the
the
episode,
rest is him doing it.
Is what happens afterwards. So this is the episode that is essentially the completion of his character arc, because the thing is, throughout the show, you notice, like, despite the fact that his father is terrible and abusive, he still
wants his approval.
He still very much, his father has a hold of him. His father can control him. He still has that, innate need to please his father. And so in order for him to fully finish his proper character arc, he has to have that moment of facing his father and actually speaking out against him. And this is one of my favorite moments in the whole show.
Because he goes up to him during the eclipse, so neither of them have firebending. They're on as equal terms as they're gonna get.
Yeah.
And he just goes, I have a few things to tell you.
Yeah, because obviously if the firebending was on, it wouldn't work too well, because Ozai's skills in firebending are definitely better than Zuko's.
He is the Fire Lord, yeah.
Yeah, and it's always been implied that Zuko struggled a little bit with his firebending, especially compared to like Azula. It came to Azula naturally, whereas it was a struggle for Zuko to learn.
Azula was born lucky. Zuko was lucky to be born.
Yeah, but no,
he's like, I didn't, what was all the things? I didn't kill the Avatar. The Avatar might be alive. And wasn't there a third thing? Was it just that he was going to free Iroh and
he said, I'm going to go free my uncle and leave and go help. And I'm going to train him. I'm going to help the Avatar to take you down. And he goes, and there's like, I love those moments. And I love, one of my favorite lines too is when he's like, he's talking about the duel and the banishment, and he goes, he's like, it was to teach you respect. And he's like, it was cruel and it was wrong. How could you justify dueling with a child? Like he fully like calls him out for that. Like, it's just like, it's just such a cathartic moment where it's like, he's finally like calling his father out. He's finally like, he not holding back, he's not trying to please his father anymore, because his father's approval doesn't matter anymore, because why should it? He's never been a good father to him. And he's like, and he says like, your uncle's gotten to you, hasn't he? And he's like, yes,
with a smile. He says that with a smile.
Like, I love it. And then he goes, hey, he's like, he's about to leave, and he's like, oh, so you're not even gonna face me with, you're gonna do it during the eclipse when I can't use firebending? What a coward. And then he's like, whatever, I'm gonna leave anyways. And he goes, do you want to know what happened to your mother? And then this is where you find out what actually happened.
Yeah.
So
she purposely became a traitor in order to save him.
Yeah. So it's implied that she killed Fire Lord Azulon. Because Azulon commanded that Zuko be killed, right? She didn't want Zuko to be killed. And so it's implied that she went to Ozai and they formulated this plan. And he was like, we formulated a plan in which she would have to be banished. Become a traitor and have to be banished. They didn't say explicitly and then he goes, she did treasonous things that night. They don't say she killed him,
but that makes perfect sense.
That's what it is, because there was suddenly like, oh, because at the time it seemed weird. It was like, oh, he suddenly died and right after he died when, like, as soon as he died is when his mother left. Like, so clearly they're tied together in some way, and it's it's
and I'm guessing that the Fire Lord didn't make the decree that his other son would get the throne when he died, so he automatically became the Fire Lord.
Yeah.
Because the Fire Lord was threatening to make Iroh the new Fire Lord.
Right, but Iroh wasn't there. Like, Iroh hadn't returned.
Right.
Because there's I think in the lore, basically after Iroh's son died, he quit the siege on Ba Sing Se, and then he traveled the world, right, to kind of like find himself, kind of, and that's where he started to sort of realize the Fire Nation was really bad, and that's where he possibly became part of the White Lotus. Maybe, I don't know, like maybe that's like where that's
that would make sense, yeah,
and that's why he seems so like to know all these other cultures really well and stuff. And he was talking about how he studied the waterbenders and stuff like that, and like to find out how to do lightning redirection, like so it's kind of interesting. You kind of see like and then like eventually he does come back, because he's there during the duel and the banishment and stuff, but at the time he wasn't, and I think that's why like Ozai was declared Fire Lord, because there was no one else there, and
that makes sense.
And because he's the only one who actually had children to carry on as well, because obviously Iroh didn't have any children anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's, you finally piece that together, and it's like, and so she was banished. So she did not die, but she was banished. So, but yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
And then at the end of that, firebending comes back on.
Yeah, and then
he goes, no hesitation, shoots lightning at his son.
Yes.
And finally, Zuko can use lightning redirection.
Yep, because he learned it. He learned that's the thing. The lightning redirection is very important, because it's you see it. Iroh taught him so long ago in the show, and he's like, if you're lucky, you'll never use this at all. And he does have to use it, but I love the shot of him like doing the redirection, though. It's just a really cool, like, they just,
because like he reacts in time to catch it with his one hand, and then there's like a moment where he's like struggling as he like moves it through his body and then shoots it back, and then he's just gone in the dust.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I just love the whole sequence scene of him facing his father. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole show.
So good.
It's very cathartic after seeing everything else, because it's like, and like I love that he's calling out like everything. He's like, we were always taught that we're fighting the war to spread our prosperity to the rest of the world. He's like, what a lie that was. He's like, the rest of the world hates us and stuff. And it's interesting. Right, it's interesting because now it's like Zuko knows that the rest of the world hates them, because he saw it. He was, he traveled through, season 2, he traveled through the Earth Kingdom. He met Earth Kingdom people. He bonded with an Earth Kingdom kid, like you saw, he
almost got a girlfriend.
Right, who was in the Earth Kingdom, and I think that's part of what created his huge conflict when he betrayed his uncle and everything. Why he was so conflicted between it, because he's kind of like, he's probably in his head thinking like, is our war justified? Like, are we actually fighting for the right thing?
Yeah.
I always thought of them as the enemy, but a lot of these people in the Earth Kingdom are good people, and because. So it's like him being banished.
It was kind of like his own version of Iroh's journey.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of implications that's sort of it was the repeat of that, where it's like now he gets to travel the world and see see it from that perspective. So it's really interesting to see all of that come full circle. And this is why, Zuko's character arc is the like best in the show, probably one of the best character arcs like ever. And, which is why I'm making a 3-part YouTube video series on it. But yeah, this is the culmination of the character arc. It's so good. I love it.
It is. And finally, that closing shot of him in a small balloon just following the Avatar.
Yep. Which will lead directly into the next
this time.
Yep. He's tracking the Avatar, but not to capture him.
Mm-hmm.
To teach him firebending. But yeah, it's amazing to finally see.
Oh, before we close, we definitely gotta mention Iroh's escape.
Oh yeah, of course. So Zuko said, he's like, I'm gonna break Uncle out of prison. Mm-hmm. He goes to break Iroh out of prison,
and he's already out.
He's already out. The bars are broken, which means Iroh literally became so strong that he could break metal bars.
I mean, perhaps with the help of heating them with firebending, but yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's probably what it was. But no, he did it during the eclipse, though. So he couldn't firebend.
My God, did he?
Because I think the implication is that he was waiting till the eclipse, so that way the guards couldn't fight back with firebending.
So Iroh just hulked out and...
I always saw that and I was just like, I want to see that scene, but I also, it's like, I want to see the scene, but I also don't, because I like having the mystery of it, just imagining what it is, what happened.
I don't remember what the female guard's name that was
oh yeah, he told her to go
nice
home.
To him. Yeah,
he's like,
trust me, it is better if you are not here this afternoon. He's very serious. It's like, all right.
You don't look well. You should take the day off. Oh no, I feel fine. No.
It is better if you are not here.
Yeah.
And the unconscious guard calling Iroh a one-man army.
It was like a one-man army. Yeah, I mean, enough dedication and working out will do some crazy things.
And you've already known Iroh to be awesome and, a badass. But this time he, had the time to train up to it, so...
Well, right, because, throughout most of it, he's skilled in fighting, but that's because he's skilled with his firebending, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not necessarily in shape throughout most of the show. He's always, kind of a little out of shape, whatever. But now he's actually completely ripped because, spent, I don't know how much time he spent in prison. I'm assuming, I'm going to assume it's a good month or two, a few months maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. He
got ripped fast.
But I mean, it was, I think that's because it was literally a constant, he's sitting in prison, nothing to do.
What else is he going to do? Yeah.
He probably spent all of his time working out and meditating maybe, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Iroh's definitely a type of person who meditates for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, he probably spent all of his time doing that and working out. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is a really good episode. Again, I think this Zuko facing his father is just such a good scene.
10 out of 10.
It's the perfect culmination of his character arc. Because this is a character arc that's been building up ever since season 1, ever since I feel like you kind of know it's coming. I mean, you probably know it's coming decently early on, but especially when you first see the storm and the Blue Spirit episodes in season 1, you kind of you're kind of starting to build that character arc from those are kind of the episodes that really start it. Because before that you kind of just see him as the villain who's trying to track the Avatar. But then ever since those few episodes there, it's you're ready for this to build and most of the development happens obviously in season 2, and then see, like it's just constantly, and then this is the final culmination of the character arc, and
And
it's
over like
really good.
such a long time, such a slow burn of it, and it's not like it's all going in the right direction or the same direction. It wavers at times, and
It's
gets
like
set back,
it's
and
like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
Yeah. And there's even times where like he's not improving, but he's also not regressing. And so it just seems like he makes a step in the wrong direction, but it doesn't really harm him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to properly describe it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is they really took the proper amount of time to develop it to the point where it is a really satisfying character arc, because it's not like it didn't happen too quickly or anything. Like, it was properly developed. And I think that definitely comes down to the fact that they had a plan from the beginning. This show is clearly very well planned out from the beginning.
Yes.
Which comes down to the fact that when they originally were doing the show, they were greenlit for 3 seasons. They were like, all right, we'll give you 3 seasons. So they knew from the beginning, they're like, we need to, they definitely planned out those 3 seasons. To make sure that it all fit together perfectly. And they were
given, thanks to that, they had the creative freedom to plan out for the long game on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the biggest complaints about like Legend of Korra is how like it doesn't seem like certain things didn't seem like they were planned out fully. But like when they were first doing Legend of Korra, they were only given 1 season, so they thought they were only going to do 1, and then it was just kind of all over the place. Whereas this, they knew from the beginning it was like it's going to be a 3-season show. And so they worked with that. They definitely had the entire story planned out beforehand, I think. Like there's definitely
so many things that are like little tidbits from even the first season that end up like having massive effects on the last season.
Yeah. Like they may not have had it planned out down to each individual episode necessarily, but like at least the general story of where everything was going. They had it all.
Yeah.
They definitely had sort of a plan there. And I think with Zuko's character, I think that's where it's like an area where you can see it even the best, where it's like they knew how much time they were able to take to develop the character, to develop the arc. So they very strategically and properly developed it. So can't praise it enough. Can't praise Zuko's character arc enough. It's just really good.
It really is, yeah.
Probably one of my favorite. It might be my favorite character arc I've ever seen in anything, honestly. Like
I can't think of a better one, at least off the top of my head.
Yeah, and like TV shows definitely have it easier because they have longer time to develop things within like movies. So like if a movie's character arc isn't as strong, it's like, well, it's kind of hard for it to be because it's just a movie. But yeah, it's great. There's a reason I wanted to make a YouTube video series about it, which is still probably going to take freaking forever because I'm really slow. The writing process is what takes the longest because I procrastinate a lot with writing, and I'm in middle of writing like the script for the second video. It's ridiculous. I want to finish all 3 scripts before I start actually making them. But yeah, anyways, this podcast has gone on long enough. We did it. We made our longest episode. It's 2 hours and 19 minutes. There might be a few moments that I cut out in here. But like there was so we should probably end now. So next, do we want to determine a movie for next week?
Right.
What's
Mad Max.
Oh, which one? Fury Road or?
Sure, yeah. I just found like a movie just called Mad Max, and it's just like, oh yeah, Mad Max is a thing.
Well, yeah, because there's
a video game of it.
There's Mad Max. There's like 4 movies because there's like the older ones with who is it? Crap, I forget who it is. It's Oh,
I mean, the one that I'm
forget
looking
the
at right
actor.
now looks very old, and it looks
Yeah.
very simple.
So there's the original Mad Max, which was like very, I think, cheaply made, simple
It
kind of.
certainly looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. Who was the main actor? Because I know his
Uh,
name. I just can't think of it.
Cast Mel Gibson,
Mel Gibson. There you go.
Joanne
Yeah.
Samuel.
Yeah. So the original three were Mel Gibson. It was like that. There was like, I've never watched them, but there was like Mad Max. I don't remember the names of the other two. There's like the Beyond the Thunderdome or whatever. Then there's the other one, Mad
Fury
Max.
Road.
Well, Fury Road is the new one, right? That's the newest one,
I would
isn't it?
think so. That's
Yeah,
the only
because
one that I know the name
yeah,
of.
yeah. So Mad Max Fury Road was like the series hadn't had a new movie in like years, and then that came out in like I don't know the 2010s somewhere, I think. And that starred a different actor as well because again, Mel Gibson's like old now. So that was the first one they switched to. I think it's Tom Hardy. That movie's praised a lot for like its visuals and stuff. So,
Right.
if you want to,
Hey, why not? I played a Mad Max game.
yeah, it's actually kind of fun though because now we can do a movie that neither one of us has ever seen.
Yeah.
So far, it's been like stuff that I've seen before, and like So sure, Mad Max Fury Road is what we'll talk about next week. I think you can do that. Like it's a series where like it doesn't matter if you watch them in order or not. So like
I've had a feeling, yeah.
yeah, it's more like the like James Bond or Indiana Jones type thing where each one is a completely different story. I think. But yeah, so Mad Max Fury Road is what we'll try to watch by next week. So yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, so we're at 2.5 hours now. So
I
let's talk.
told you 3 hours.
No, we're not at 3 hours. That's next time. That's next time we talk about Avatar. Anyways, so yeah, we're ready to close. So we'll talk about Mad Max Fury Road next week.
Awesome.
This has been the Waban podcast. You can listen to it multiple different places if you would like. I don't know where you're listening to it now, but it is located on my YouTube channel, which is called Nim TV. That is NIMTV on YouTube. You can find it there. It is also on multiple audio platforms. That is Anchor, anchor.fm/Waban, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So you can find it at all those places for audio platforms. And it is released every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, so that's when you can listen to it. Thank you for listening to the Waban podcast. I have been Nim.
And I'm the Goose Boy.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.